The U.S. Marine was halfway down the lawn of the mall in Washington when something tugged at his sleeve. It was a young boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old. The Marine immediately went down at his haunches to look the boy in the eyes. No words came out of the youngster's mouth with big eyes and a lot of uncertainty in his whole demeanor. He slipped a note into the Marine's hand. Then he turned around and ran back in the direction he came from. Perplexed, the Marine unfolded the note and read it. The words on the slip of paper rang like alarm bells in his head. He rose to his feet in a flash, dug his cell phone from his pocket, and dialed a number. He had to get back up and get it now. 8-year-old Keenan Williamson sat at the kitchen table of the tiny apartment he shared with his mom. He was doing his homework and waiting for the half hour he'd get to spend with her. She left for work at 5 a.m. every morning and then came home at around 5 in the afternoon. For 30 minutes, she would listen to Keenan's stories about his day. They eat something together, and then she would rush out to be in time for her second job. Keenan knew she did everything in her power to make ends meet, and he knew what it took out of her. He could see it in her exhausted eyes, in her slumped shoulders, even in her face when she tried to smile. At 5:05, Keenan stood up from the kitchen table to open the apartment door for her. He was just in time to see her coming up the stairs to the front door. She was looking particularly tired today, and by her frown, he knew she was carrying something else in her heart, something that was upsetting her greatly. They hugged each other and held hands as they walked into the apartment. She sat at the kitchen table with him for a while in silence. He could see she was working up the courage to tell him something, and he let her be. She would say what she had to when she was ready. Keenan reached across the small round table and rested his 8-year-old hand on hers. Jennifer Williamson looked at her son. She didn't know how to tell him it would shatter the little bit of peace he had and upend his entire young life, but she had no choice. He had to know. After all, he was all she had, and she was all he had. They were two against the whole wide world. "Keenan," she started, "I need you to be brave. I have something to tell you." Already, she could see the concern on his little face. It broke her heart. Keenan grew up so fast after his dad left. Almost instinctively, he started to pick up the slack around the apartment while she was at work. He washed the dishes and cleaned the living room, and nothing was ever out of place in his bedroom. If she let him, he'd do the washing too, but she wasn't ready to load that onto his tiny shoulders too. He already seemed to know and understand too much for his young age. Jennifer took a deep breath, steadied herself, took both his hands and hers, and told him she'd been to the doctor twice in the past 3 weeks. The first time was to run some tests, and the second time, which was today, was to get the results. The results were not good. She had cancer in her breast. The doctor told her about the various treatment options, but her prognosis was far from good. At most, the doctor had told her she had 6 months to live. Jennifer tried to use the lightest possible words and not burden her son more than she had to, but she didn't think downplaying it would help him in the long run. When the hard truth was out there, she watched Keenan carefully. She saw his young face crunch up as the news sunk in. His eyes watered up, and he wiped the tears away with the back of his hand. Jennifer squeezed his hand. She promised him she was going to fight this illness with all she wouldn't be able to work as many hours anymore, and that meant they would have to make do with less money. By this time, Jennifer was crying too. In front of her eyes, Keenan's demeanor changed. He did that thing he did to comfort her for a little while. He became an adult. When he put on his brave face, he instantly looked 10 years older, and that's what he was doing now. He was showing her he had her back and that he would do absolutely for new. There was no getting better this time. She squeezed his hands again and told him the rest because I can't work as much anymore. We're not going to have the fun Christmas we planned. Keenan, she said with a shaky voice, for 6 months, Jennifer had put away a little bit of money every week with one aim, only to create the most amazing Christmas cheer Keenan had ever experienced for a month now during the little bit of time they had together. They'd laughed, planned, dreamed, and got excited about this Christmas. It was going to be a dream festive season, regardless of the hardships they faced. Keenan flashed a weak smile. "It doesn't matter, Mommy," he said. "We'll still make it great. We'll be together. And all the things we wanted to do this year can wait until next year when you're all better." Jennifer didn't know how to tell him. Next Christmas? Well, she just didn't know how to tell him. Up in his room, Keenan's mind was a roller coaster. There was a part of him that was terribly sad. That part knew that his mom was going to die. It frightened him and made him want to cry uncontrollably. But there was another part of him too. This was the part that could make what his mom called Keenan plans. The young boy pushed his sadness and fear to the back of his mind and focused on his Keenan plan mind. He decided at that moment that he was going to make this the best Christmas his mom had ever had. He had absolutely no idea how yet, but the decision was made, and Keenan knew if he put his mind to something, he could make it happen. The next day at school, Keenan couldn't concentrate. The teachers in his first 3 classes of the day admonished him for daydreaming. They were right. He was daydreaming, but he wasn't about to tell them why or what about, not yet anyway. By lunchtime, Keenan had figured out a plan, and by the time he headed to the bus stop after school, that plan had solidified. The bus stopped a block away from the apartment. Keenan broke into a run. The moment stepped off the bus, there was a book he needed right now. It was on the shelf in his bedroom that was the last piece of the puzzle. As soon as he got home, Keenan bolted to his room and looked through his bookcase. Practical Steps for Young Entrepreneurs. That was the book he was looking for. He spent a few hours reading and rereading one chapter. He awoke before his mom the next morning and prepared her breakfast. He opened his mother's bedroom door with his foot and carried the tray over to her. "My beautiful boy," she said when she woke up, "you are truly my angel." While she pecked at her food, he asked her the big question. Could he go to the mall in the city after school? "What do you want to do there?" his mom asked with a frown. "It's something for school. I have to interview a bunch of people. You know, ask them questions and write down their answers," he said. He hated to lie to his mom, but this bit was crucial if his plan going to work. His mother frowned and hesitated, but she eventually agreed to let him go for 1 hour. Keenan almost got detention for not paying attention in class during the first period. That would be a disaster, so he upped his game. When break time came, he settled in a far corner of the cafeteria and started writing. After much scratching out, rewriting, and correcting, he was satisfied with what he had written. Now came the second part of his plan. The book said 50, so he'd have to make 50 copies of his note. He rushed down to the administration building. The break was almost over. Keenan sighed with relief when he noticed an open copier. For the rest of that day at school, he was calm. He'd done what he needed to do. At just after 3 p.m., Keenan stepped off the bus and walked onto the mall. The book had said 50. He looked around. Yep, he had chosen well. There were more than 50 people here. He thought again about what his book about young entrepreneurs said, especially the chapter about marketing. It said once you have your business plan together, you have to do intensive marketing to set things in motion. And the book said you have to interact with at least people about your idea to start with. And Keenan was set on finding these 50 people and giving them each one copy of the note he had painstakingly written. It would only take one person for it to work. Just one. It had to work. Andrew Stiles had joined the U.S. Marines 3 years before. Currently, he was part of the squad that guarded the West Wing of the White House. He was off duty and strolling down the mall to clear his head. Then when the young boy came up to him and slipped him the note, there was something about the kid that he knew, even before he opened and read the note. When he finally unfolded and read the note, he swallowed hard to stop his tears. This kid needed help, and that's what the Marines did. They helped Andrew fish his cell phone from his pocket and dialed a number. "Everybody," he said at the end of the conversation. "No excuses. We have an assignment." He met with his fellow Marines just off Connecticut Street. When everybody was settled, Andrew called the meeting to order. "There's this kid," Andrew started. "His mom is dying. This young man is one of us. He has heart. Here is what we're going to do." The Marines leaned in to hear Keenan's plight in Andrew's plan. Keenan was busy with his homework. He was constantly aware of his mom in the bedroom. She was restless, and he could hear she was uncomfortable. He was busy making her tea when the phone rang. "Is that Private Williamson?" The voice on the other end asked. Keenan was confused. "This is Keenan," he said. "Who do you want to speak with?" "This is Sergeant Andrew Stiles," the voice said. "You became one of us when you asked for our help, and we are going to help you." The picture came into focus in Keenan's mind. He had only given one of 50 notes to one soldier in the mall the day before, so this had to be him. "Can we meet?" the Marine on the other end asked. "Maybe tomorrow after school." When Keenan came out of school the next afternoon, 3 Marines in full uniform were waiting for him. They greeted him like he was one of them. It made him feel like a $1 million. Over a burger, they asked him about his plan. He explained as well as he could, but added that he needed grown-up help to make it a reality. He wanted to give his mom the best Christmas ever, given that it could be her last. The Marine smiled at him. Andrew said, "Well, soldier, you came to the right place. That's what we're here for. Here's our plan." Andrew was completely taken by the boy. They were going to make this kid's dream of a spectacular Christmas come true. That was for sure. But Andrew was hatching his own plan too, something neither the boy nor his mother would be expecting, and something that could quite literally change their lives. He dialed a number again. Keenan started counting the days to Christmas. He knew it was going to be special. He really liked the Marines he'd met, and he knew that they would pull out all the stops. Now, all he needed to do was keep the secret from his mom. On Christmas Day, Keenan helped his mom get out of bed. He'd ran her a bath, put her clothes out for her, and encouraged her when it was obvious the pain was bad. Then he helped her into the kitchen and sat her down at the table. "What are you up to, Keenan?" she asked with a twinkle in her eye. "You're up to something. I can see it." There was a knock on the door. "You said, Mom? I'll get it," Keenan said. He flew up and ran to the door. There were 9 Marines at the door, all with something in their arms. One had a turkey, another had a gammon, others had various vegetables, and yet others carried bowls of dessert. 2 men had a fully decorated Christmas tree between them, and another had a bag of wrapped Christmas gifts. "Where do you want these, Private?" Andrew asked with a smile. Keenan smiled back and showed them where to place the Christmas tree and then took them through to the kitchen. "Sergeant Andrew Stiles in the U.S. Marine Corps at your service, madam," Andrew said. When Keenan led them into the kitchen, "You sit, and we'll serve you lunch." Tears flowed down Jennifer's cheeks. She reached out and took Keenan in her arms. "You did this?" Another knock on the door. Andrew said, "I'll get that. I know who it is." He returned a few moments later with an older, distinguished-looking man. "This is my father," he said proudly. "Dr. Quentin Stiles. He's an oncologist." What Andrew didn't say was that Dr. Quentin Stiles was one of the top oncologists in the country. Many considered him a miracle worker. Patients with the worst imaginable prognosis came to see him, and somehow he managed to cure them. Andrew kneeled on one side of Jennifer and Dr. Stiles on the other. "My dad has agreed to treat you free of charge." 1 year later, Keenan and Jennifer sat in their lounge. They had a small Christmas tree up, and there was a turkey in the oven. Christmas card from Andrew and Quentin Stiles hung on the corkboard. Jennifer said, "This Christmas is special, Keenan. I am only here because of what you did last year. You're a hero. In every sense. What a magnificent end to a sad story. Have you ever had trouble and then a U.S. Marine stepped up to the plate to help? Tell us your story in the comments. We'd love to hear for now. We're out of here. Catch you in the next video.